Last night, we witnessed the vice presidential debate between Vice President Mike Pence and, of course, that evil witch, Kamala Harris. It was a real display by Kamala Harris, smirking, laughing. She uses the word every 5 words. I don't know how she claims she's a great prosecutor, frankly. Obviously, she was simply an administrator, because anybody who learns how to speak doesn't use the word It's kind of like the kids now using the word like. But it was an extremely boring debate. But of course, Susan Page, who I've dealt with over the years at USA Today, did her best to ask loaded questions. They weren't quite as obviously loaded as with Chris Wallace, because she's a woman. But Pence did a good job, I thought. On the other hand, he needed to be tougher on Kamala Harris. I mean, there's a false aspect of society that if you're a woman, you get it both ways. In other words, you can attack as much as you want, you can be as vicious as you want, but a man can't hit back. That's just the way it is in today's world. It's the way it's been for quite a while, actually. And Pence did get rolled a little bit during that debate by Kamala Harris. But the bottom line is this morning, typically, and the president's right, the Washington swamp pulled the rug out from under him and said that the next presidential debate in Miami could only be by virtual Zoom or Skype or whatever you want to use. That's typical. It's happening all across the board, happens in court proceedings, happens in D.C. bar proceedings, happens all over the place. You need the personal interaction really to show demeanor, to show reaction and that kind of thing. And people are taking the easy way out. And while COVID-19 is something that has to be taken seriously, and while the president has given conflicting messages and he's dug himself a ditch in that regard, he's alienated a lot of the people in the middle, the 20%, it is unlikely at this point, unless something happens by the grace of God, some event, that the president will win re-election. I'm sorry to say that, but you've got to be prepared for that. I said that yesterday. Right now, the way he has behaved and held himself out, the reality doesn't mean it's right, but that middle ground, that 20% who's neither pro-Trump nor pro-radical left, is leaning towards Biden because they don't know who he is. Biden's a non-entity. They're going to be voting against Trump. So in terms of the debate itself, the president says, I'm not going to appear virtually. I think he did the right thing. He has to take a stand. He has to show principles, but he better do something affirmative now. He has to do something really dramatic to win the 20% in the middle. And that's what's lacking at this point in time, particularly, again, with him and half his staff and a lot of the Republican Party getting COVID-19. It's a very powerful campaign message for Biden, even though Biden would have done nothing differently. In fact, it would have been a whole lot worse. What he needs to do, what the president needs to do is show leadership. He needs to show leadership with regard to the Chinese. This would directly impact the criticism that he's taking over COVID-19. As I've said over and over again, it's not enough to call it the Kung flu. It's not enough to blame the communist Chinese. You need to take action. Yeah, blame them, but take action. The president should be instructing his attorney general to support our class action in Dallas, Texas. I don't need them, but it would be certainly helpful to have him come in and say, we support what Klayman's doing, what Freedom Watch is doing. But they're not going to do that. We know that's not going to happen. Roger Stone poisoned the well with me. I've had to sue him, as I've said, I think 6 or 7 times for Dr. Corsi and I. He defamed us and tried to harm us because he was afraid that Corsi would testify against him in his criminal trial. In fact, Corsi never intended to say anything other than the truth, and it probably wouldn't have been harmful to Stone. But Stone's a paranoid individual, and he even put a crosshairs to the head of the judge, to try to threaten her. And then he had Tucker Carlson say things that impacted on the jury's safety, despite the fact that the jury certainly, was a Washington, D.C. jury. His lawyers never sought to get the case out of Washington, D.C., so he has nobody to blame but his own lawyers for the situation that he's in. He's a 7-time convicted felon, 7 counts of felony. President commuted a sentence, but he'll live with that felony conviction for the rest of his life. And this is why I have been prevented, I believe, from speaking with the president. Stone is an extremely vindictive individual, and he still has the ear of the president. And I think a lot of what's happening in terms of the president's behavior, which is erratic, is coming from Roger Stone and people like Roger Stone. Maybe Corey Lewandowski as well, who's kind of the flip side of Roger Stone. So the president needs to do something dramatic. He needs to support a real action against the Chinese for the massive damage they've caused, the trillions of dollars to our economy, to our health. He needs to do what a president would do and take a stand. And that will help him with the coronavirus pandemic, the impression that he's given, that he's not in control, that he's taken risks. In fact, those risks have come back to bite him and half the Republican Party, for lack of a better word. So that's my message for today. Go to freedomwatchusa.org. You join up to our class action and support it with tax-deductible contributions. We have cases in The Hague, Holland. We're going to bring cases in other countries as well. We have one in Israel. Poland is likely on the horizon very, very soon. Other countries as well, because the world, frankly, is fed up with the communist Chinese. And I tell you, the Chinese people are fed up with the leadership in Beijing. They're more than fed up. 30% of the people who signed up for our class action are Chinese or Asian Americans. So I want to thank you for all your support. Also, pre-order my book, It Takes a Revolution, Forget the Scandal Industry. Gives a way out of the mess that we're in today. It's likely that we, the American people, will have to rise up, because it certainly is not likely that the president, as of this point in time, is going to be reelected on November 3rd. I'm sorry to say that, but that's the reality. God bless you. God bless your family. God save your family. Thank you for listening to me. With God's grace, we will prevail. I'll be back tomorrow with another special podcast.
The in-OLED display in the Cadillac Escalade has 38 total diagonal inches of color display. So why do we give it a curve too? I guess you could say we like to bend the rules. The 2021 Cadillac Escalade. Never stop arriving.